Hi everyone. Welcome to week 9 of our Government 2305 Introduction to American Government class. This week we will be turning to the topic of elections and the behavior of candidates and voters during an election. This chapter is important because the most visible way in which American citizens can actively engage in their democracy is through the voting booth. Voting is the most important of the linkage institutions which were built into our system of government and which connect the citizen to his or her elected representatives. In theory, elections involve a choice between each candidate's policy platforms and should signify a democratic choice as to the direction that an elected official should take in response to the wishes of his constituents. This is true whether you are voting for a local school board member, a member of your city council, a state representative, or a member of Congress, or the President of the United States. But many times elections can be beauty pageants, where the voters select an individual on the basis of his or her charisma and personality. Or they can be prospective choices based on what a candidate is promising to do, or they can be retrospective choices based upon what an incumbent has done or not done with respect to the voters' desires. Most elections are conducted in two stages. The first stage is the primary, where the candidates within a particular party are narrowed down to one candidate who will become the party's nominee. These types of elections are actually conducted by the major parties themselves in cooperation with local and statewide elected officials. The second type of election is the general election, where the major party candidates, and in some cases independent or third-party candidates, will face off against each other in order to determine who will be elected to a particular public office. In most elections, there are two types of voting systems. The first is a plurality, which means that whoever gets the most votes wins. The second is a majority, which means that one candidate must win by at least 50% plus one vote. Candidates who do not carry a majority most often need to participate in an election where the top two candidates for position must run against each other in order to determine a winner. That's a runoff. These are most common in local elections and primaries where multiple candidates are running. There are different forms of ballots that may be used in an election. These include traditional paper ballots, punch card ballots, and electronic voting. We will examine each of these and discuss the pros and cons of each type. But today, the most common type of ballot in the United States is the electronic voting system. Next, we will talk about the rules and the procedures of presidential elections in the United States. First and foremost in presidential elections is that you must remember that citizen voters don't actually vote for the president. We actually vote for the candidate or the party that will receive our state's electoral votes. This is true in 48 of the 50 states which hold winner-take-all forms of presidential elections. Your textbook will take you through the presidential election system, including the selection of candidates for each party and the importance of party primaries and conventions for selecting which of the major parties' candidates will receive the most delegates at the National Convention. We will then take a look at how presidential candidates conduct their campaigns, including laying down fundamental character and policy factors, setting the stage for a presidential run, announcing the candidacy, securing the party's nomination, and running a general election campaign. Lastly, we will take a look at voter behavior, and this will include an examination of the paradox of voting, where we actually take a look at the costs associated with casting a vote and whether or not an individual will choose to participate by voting at all. At the conclusion of the chapter, we will be looking at the 2016 election itself, and we will look forward to the 2018 presidential election season. Okay, now let's talk about this week's assignments. First is the discussion question, which discusses a New York Times editorial written by William Galston of the University of Maryland, where he proposes making voting a mandatory practice with a fine for those who are eligible to vote but fail to do so. Of course, as with other discussions we have done, you will post a response to the initial question, 1 or 2 paragraphs, please, then respond to another student's post, and that should be approximately 1 paragraph. Next, you will work on your position paper number 4, which gives you some recent literature on the topic of the Electoral College system in the United States. In just the past couple of weeks, we have seen this topic become even more heated as the stream of Democratic candidates widens. You will prepare a 1-page position paper addressing the following questions. Based on the documents provided, should we as a nation begin turning away from the Electoral College system? Would you support a movement away from a winner-take-all system of electoral votes in this state? All of your work for both the discussion questions and the position paper will be due on Friday, March the 29th at 11:59 p.m. And that's about it for this week. I hope you all have a great week